Malay, Esain Alarim, Bilamalas, Esain Alarim, Hayan, Yava Ezri, Mim Adoinoi, Oise Shemaim Varet, Al Yitain Lamoid Aglecha, Al Yanum Shoimrecha, Hine Layanum Velo Yishon, Shoimer Yisrael, Adoinoi Shomrecha, Adoinoi Silcha Yad Yaminecha, Yoimam Hashem Shliakecha, Ve'ereach Valoila, Adoinoi Yishmoch Mekara, Yishmo Es Nafshecha, Adoinoi Yishmo Seicha V'yecha, Mi'ata, V'yagoin L'cheinu Kol V'yisrael, Shamokim Menachem Alim Tzim Etzom V'ach V'eloi Meshubit V'kolov, Asher Kol Ozman Kori V'noi Ma'aramein. This week's parsha, BAis Yaakov, famous Rashi Chazal say Yaakov is not the only one who went out. Just when it sees tzaddik in the ear, when a tzaddik goes out, Pana Ziva, Pana Hoida, Pana Hadara. When we heard yesterday this sudden btzror, our Max, how could Agudah be without Max Tennenbaum? Max was one of the fixtures of BAis Medrash in Torah. His harvanya and learning. Remember, since the first day I came, the love that he had for learning, the love he had for doing a chesed to someone else. He was so non-assuming for himself, but to give for anybody else, to anybody, do for someone else. And he did it in a very modest way. But I can't think of our BAis Medrash Agudah without Max, without Menachem Yisroel ben Shlomo Shalom. It's unbelievable. Pana Yaakov Yisroel, his name is Yisroel Yaakov, he left this world. We lost the ziv and the hadara of our BAis Medrash, the shrine of our BAis Medrash. To see someone like Max, someone who is learning day and night at Emes Talmud Chacham, learned through Shas Rabbi a few times, many times, and Harvard through Shas. Remember years ago when he used to learn with Menachem Berkowitz, Zanga Zintershtark Luch, and any time they had, they learned together. And anytime you spoke to him, he lit up when it came to Torah, lit up when it came to do anything for someone, to chesed someone. But Yitzay, when he leaves this world, he left the Agudah. Agudah is left without its Ziva, Hoida, and Adora. Without Max, we're missing the beauty of someone who loves learning, who loves always coming, running, even the last few years when he was shvach. Always coming, running to daven. The last time I saw him was Shabbos. You know, the way he walked and the way, but he came. Remember a few years ago when he wasn't well, right before Yom Neroim, he came, asked me I should come see him. At that time, the doctors all gave hope. And the BAis gave him 7 more years, 7 more good years. 7 years he was able to be again Max, doing the Torah and the chesed that he always did, the Torah of Avodah Gemillas Chasodim. Now he left. I can't see the BAis Medrash without Max. Upano Zoiva, B'ziva Ba'adora. BAis Yaakov, the Zohar Kodesh says, Parsha BAis is the parsha of going out to this world. We come to this world, and it says Yaakov Avinu said this kapitel we just said, Kuf Kav Aleph, You come to this world. You come to this world. So first, Yaakov went and learned 14 years. First, a child before you come out to this world, to be able to be prepared for this world. The Bansham teaches, it has a malach come and teach a child kol Torah kula in the womb of his choshev mother. The Tennenbaum alei sholem. Achakav einikel. And he learned Torah, and with that he stayed his whole life with that love of Torah. The Ezer of Torah, Hashem, the Bansham was there to help him the whole time, and the Bansham was there. Everything he did was with the Siyata D'Shmaya of the Rabbeinu Shalom, the Siyata D'Shmaya of the Rabbeinu Shalom. Hashem Yishma Seichel v'Yecho Miyato v'Adoilam. Hashem guards him. Seichel. When you go out to this world, you come out back from this world. Ashrei Yeladatoi, his parents, Shlomo, who was from the Amudei of the BAis Medrash. Ashrei Yeladatoi had a son like Max, had a son like Menachem Yisrael. Someone who was his Midas Toivus, his Feinkeit, his Anivus, with his godless in Torah, with his godless in everything. His Anivus comes from home, doing and Reb Shea said, Ashrei Misha Meis Mitoich Mitzvah. Praises a person, I should die from doing a mitzvah. Max, even in his weak state, he always, Tom Chashabas, since the beginning of Tom Chashabas, he was there always from the first ones being involved, anything that's involved. The last thing he did was doing Tom Chashabas. The last thing he did, Meis Mitoich Mitzvah. He died from doing a mitzvah. Ashrei Yechelki Imayim. Someone goes and leaves this world doing a mitzvah. He's leaving with mitzvahs from this world. He's leaving with chesed from this world. Chesed Olam Yibana, the Rebbeinu Shalom built this whole world only for chesed. And someone who leaves this world with chesed, leaves this world with mitzvahs, shows what the person is, shows that Yitzias Ben Olam, the Miyoim Valdai, Ashrei, that someone like him was part of our BAis Medrash. And I'm thinking how it could BAis Medrash be void without him, without Max, without his Ziv and Haida and Adora, of a Ziv of a person whose love for Torah, love for mitzvahs, love for chesed, love for coming and even the hardest time, even in the worst kind of weather, coming and pushing himself to come to the BAis Medrash, coming to help and coming to do. We could only say Baruch Dayana Emes. The Rebbeinu Shalom took him in his young years. Could have so many more years, but the Rebbeinu Shalom knows best. Could only bench the Rebbeinu Shalom. Hashem Yishmarcha Mikol Ra. Hashem guards him. I remember 43 years ago, the whole BAis Medrash was so besimcha when Max got engaged. Remember, we went to the Chasana terrace on the park. The simcha we all had. Gamzu l'toiva. The 43 years of our Admikdashis leave it bazu. Gamzu l'toiva. The Bansham gave him such a choshev eishes kayel, such a choshev wife. Rivki was angezinnt and stark. Mama shooted on him and did everything. And made the simcha build the home and together with Max, the shalom bayis they had with each other, the caring for each other, doing for each other. the Gamzu L'Toiva, the 43 years that was L'Toiva, the Simcha that it brought to Max and the family. And what happens, Eila told us, the children, Baruch Hashem, the Choshva children they had, the Choshva children, Bereshis Bara, they Mepharshim say, B'derech Remez, Bereshis Bara, you get created, Noach, first it's calm, Lech Lecha, you go out to the world, Vayera, you show yourself, then you go, you get married, told us you have your children, look at the Choshva children that he has, Shlomi, and Racheli and Dvorah, Choshva children, grandchildren, the Kibbut Avaim, unbelievable that they have, and they still have, all comes from the Gamzu L'Toiva, a house that was, the whole house was a house of Kedushas Hashem, a house that was a Mishkan Hashem, the Torah that's being learned, the mitzvahs that's being done, the chesed that's being done through Max and through the Hachaim, Rivki, everything, anytime you needed anything, the first one to do. Ein Ish Meis Elul Ishtay. Max leaves the world. And Rivki made the phone call yesterday and told me, I couldn't believe, she said, Max just died. Max, who's so alive. Max, who went and against all the odds, still lived with us. Still, even though the doctor said, it's hard to see how he's living, but the Rebbe Menachem gave him the Chaim Tovim. And Rivki told me she took these years as years that Rebbe Menachem gave her a present, more years, 7 more years of Toiva, Sheva Shonim Shel Soiva, 7 years of Soiva, 7 years of having him around again. Just celebrated a bris by Shlomi, just celebrated Simchas. He himself drove to Lakewood himself, and that still pushed himself to the last minute. Till the Rebbe Menachem took his life in the middle of doing a mitzvah. Mitzvah is Megan. And the Chayodim writes that if a person dies with a mitzvah is a simon, just like Sarah Menu died, he died when the time was. It's not going to Shabbos, lifting the box is not what made him die. He died because the Rebbe Menachem wanted to show Max is someone who's meis mitoich mitzvah. He's someone whose life was mitzvahs. His life was Torah. When he dies, leaves this world, he leaves this world with the mitzvah that he was doing. That's he leaves this world. Still checking the money the night before of the time for Shabbos pushkas. And still, this is what he lived for, to do and to chesed. The main thing is always a soft word. Anytime you spoke to him, you learned from him what it means to speak nicely to everybody. Make everyone feel good. Make a joke. Make a person feel good. Make a person feel that the other person is the most important person. I'm nothing. So unassuming. And it's so beautiful to see their marriage. Beautiful. And that's why there was Zoichet Eila told us the beautiful children they have. What can we say? What can we do? Good is left without Max, but Good is still left with Rivki and her children. Still left with the legacy that their parents, Shlomo and Deborah, left. The beautiful legacy, that they left of Torah and mitzvahs, Ma'asim Tovim. The Menachem should hope that Menachem Yisroel, when Shlomo should be male Yosher, for his possible wife, and for the children, for his BAis Medrash that he loved so much, for Toronto that he loved as much. At the end of this parsha, we find Yaakov called Yaakov to his brothers. Rashi says, who are his brothers? His children who are there always to help him. Here it means many things. His children who are his brothers who are there, but also it means that good a family are all his brothers. Everyone loved him so much. Anyone who just heard the btzror from our BAis Medrash started crying, falling apart. How could it be? How could it be? Achim, we're all brothers together. Achim, we're brothers together, and one of our brothers left. One of our brothers left. Menachem Yisrael, Max left us. BAis Medrash. One of our beautiful chabura that we have in our BAis Medrash. The echad min chabura, the miyuchad min chabura, passes away. We all have to go to get together and be strong again. Remember his legacy. Remember what he stood for. Remember what it means to help people, to do for others. Remember what it means to learn Torah. Remember what it means to daven, to go to push yourself, to daven with minyan, to push yourself to do everything. I remember that when he was 7 years ago about fasting on Yom Kippur. How could I not fast? How could I not fast? The Rav has to tell me I can't not fast. How can he live with life without doing mitzvahs? Because that's what he learned from his family. The Baim should help. They should be male yosher. For his choshev with children, grandchildren. His choshev, his sister Vivian, and Yossi was so dedicated together. They were shochan and ach together. The best shchenim and the best brothers and sisters together, caring for each other. I'm sure it's still going to continue. The question was, where should Max be buried? Is he buried in Toronto, where he lived all his life? Toronto, where he was so part of it. But before it was nipped a few weeks ago, the mace, with the tzibui, but he was mitzvah that he wants to go to Lakewood. And that's again, Max. If my children live in Lakewood, I don't want to make it hard for them. Everything is for the children. Everything is for somebody else. Everybody's for caring. Our Feld is not going to have Max there. The Chalk Aguda is not going to have Max there. But we still have Max wherever he is. Wherever, because we always remember to live a life like him. A life complete with Torah and mitzvahs and davening, Torah, Avodah Chasodim. Revayim Shalom, there should be a male yosher for everybody, especially for Eretz Yisroel. For Eretz Yisroel, I remember every time we spoke, Max was crying always for what's happening. What's happening almost the 430 days already. The Shavuyim and the Tzrurahs that are happening. You should be male choice, he's coming up to Shemayim, and the Zaydas, the Chakav Zaydas, and all the Hachaim connected him. Should go with them to take his covered. We should be zoicha to see. Shouldn't be any mitzoros in Klal Yisrael. We should be zoicha to see the Vaychi, Vayesh Mikates, Vayigash Vaychi, the Kates, the end of life. Vayigash Vaychi, and there'll be Tchias Hamesim. We zoicha to see the Tchias Hamesim Memher B'Yameinu Amen.
Mit Zibbe, wie Jedidem, auf Kräuven, kinderlich, am is Asif, gekwoit, an der Schumme, Tehay. That's going back to the Shoyrish. Menachem Yisroel is Rushatai Vesmi. Every time Yidden get together, befrat Fazan Shlomo, it's a beginning from Tehay. Every person has a few moments, makes a cheshbon nefesh. Everything else is set aside. You're thinking of something on a different level than till now. Person makes a cheshbon, imi metahar eschem. Make a cheshbon of what a person can do in this world. David HaMelech said a kapitel Tillim that we say it many, many times. Mizmor David Hashem roi lo yachser. Gam ki aylaich begait salmuves la iruru. Ki atu imudi. Ach toi v'chesed yedefini kol yimai chayai. Shafti BAis Hashem la'oirech yomim. The Melech said this as the Medrash. He was in the wilderness, lost in a matzav, that he didn't see himself out. As moments went by, he realized that his neshama is literally leaving him. He wasn't able to cope weiter. All the peklach that he was carrying, all the situations and all the difficulties that we all know that HaMelech went through. An example for all of us sitting here today. Making a cheshbon of what HaMelech went through his days, till he got to the Malchus. And the HaMelech said, Gam ki eilach b'geitzal mubes, lo iruru. I have to make a cheshbon. Lo iruru, how was that? And the last minute Hashem brought him a eisef, a grass that had a taste and a tam of my en oilam habu, a tam from Gan Eden. And that gave him chiyas. That gave him, that he was able to get together and go and become Melech Yisroel, Melech Mashiach, that we're all waiting for. What is the last words that the HaMelech said there? Ach, toiv u'chesed yodefini kol yemai chayai. Ein toiv ele toive. Ein Stück andere Sache in der Welt that gives a person such a chiyas, like Torah. Ein toiv ele Torah. But when it goes together with toiv v'chesed, it's combined with midas hachesed. Midas Avruam Avini. Kol yemai chayai. A person is devoted to these both avodas of toiv v'chesed. Is damals v'shafti BAis Hashem la'oirech yomim. Ariches yomim, as Chazal tell us, is in this world. Ariches yomim is the continuation of the oilam hanitzchi that the HaMelech was zoiche to be the goyal Yisroel, to uplift Klal Yisroel and all matzuvim. But al gabezeh, on all this, there's one word before toiv v'chesed, ach, the middle of miet. Ach, as the Rov so sagen gesinnt und stark, hat Mai ve'eschem schon mentioned. Ach, toiv v'chesed, a beginne von unassuming. This is what we saw by the Nifta, Mendel, as some of us called him Mendele, because that's the way he carried himself till the last day. I didn't know him so much as Max. He never told me that his name is Max. Mendele, because that's the way he carried himself. Shiftless, pashtus. Het nicht existiert. 45 Jahre, 45 years. Yisroel told me when he started Toim Shabbos, Mendel was there next to him, the first one. Nee, mit der Mitzvah. Noch a Jahr. We werd meet. I get tired. I'm old. Schon a balbatische Yid. Give him a few dollars. You get a few dollars. But to be able to go to Stein dort and packen Päcklich, and to gehen and schleppen, and to go to deliver, das a beginne von Kol Kiloi Butel im Vittel la Hashem v'Klal Yisroel. Am a dreigene Flue. Levaya we should be zoiche to understand this Madreige. It's clear, as the Ruf mentioned, that that's why he was Zoiche, to give back his Neshama to Heure. Lifnai mi atem metaharem, as I mentioned before, Menachem Yisroel, in mi metahar eschem. He has a schis to be ma'oyer all of us, to be able to come, even a kolshehi, of bittul, of ach, toiv v'chesed. Ildefini kol yemai chayai. We should remember there's a tachlis in this world that a person can be zoiche every day of his life. Shiv yoim echot lefnai misoschu. A person doesn't know the day that he's going. But Mendele prepared himself. Kol yemai chayai. He was prepared. He went prepared. When Mendel was Oiche, Aisha's Chayel Miyens, Hashem granted him mit Azah Bruche in Stieb. He was Oiche together. As we all know, that home is Kiloi Chesed, Gedoylach Nusses Olchem Yoise, that goes on in that house, and for all types of people, for all levels, it says something. It was a home from Avuam Ovini that Mrs. Tennenbaum was Zoiche to build together with the Nifta. Avuam was 75 years old. Ben Chumaish v'shivim shunu v'tzaisoi mai churan as tzadikim tatschen. Churan means charoin af, matziv of difficulties. It does not have to be explained that the oilam hazeh that we live in, everybody in his way, in one way or another, we do abchinen from charoinaf difficulties, nisyonis, schis, der Yite Zoiche, doch Teufel Chesed, to build a home, at the Haris HaKodesh, with ehrliche Chushe Buche Ingeleit, Shlomo is als aangezind, durch een Seiden. The two items, the daughters, the einiglich, Kilamahivim. It's clear that it's kedai to mention the schis von seiner Seides, den heiligen Sanzeruf, Sechisa, Yugain Ulaini, Vol Kol Yisroel, Udovat L'Kshanove, and that's from where the Shoirish is, from Mrs. Tennenbaum. V'halach lefunechu tzidkechu ikevoid Hashem ya'asfach. All these tzedukes v'chesed, that Mendel, Menachem Yisroel, Ben Reb Shlomo, was Zoiche, Ikevoid Hashem Ya'asvach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu embraced him to come l'shumayim, to be a meiletz toiv, for his akeres habayis, for his wife, so sein gesinnt and stark, she to continue with her strength, with her koiches, for das, for tevinu, for the kinderlich, for the einiglich, and for all the Yedidim Ne'emunim that are sitting here and that are not sitting here, we kannst the ganze Kol Mai Chaya for so Neiman, the Schizal Mai Gesam for all, and for Klal Yisroel, Lo Shezan Yutzu Macharoin, Charoin Af, in ganz Klal Yisroel muss schon solche sein, zu des Galles, am so solche sein, mit Kabel zusammen, von einem Mashiach Tzidkaini, mit auch Simche, Da muss schon mekiem werden, ich will Hashem was Netzach, muss Hashem dem mal kalpun.
Many of you here have known Max for a long time. Some of you your whole lives. I've known him for 50 years. From day one, we have always been one family. So much more than a brother-in-law, so much more than an uncle to my children, and certainly the best brother that my wife could ever have. Over the years, I can't count the many times people have said, "Where's Max?" And now we're going to always ask, "Where's Max?" He's no longer with us. When I was first dating my wife, and I was checking into the family, and it was disproportionate how much information I got about Max as opposed to anything else. And I couldn't believe there was such a person the way they described him. And they didn't do justice. I didn't realize what a brother I was getting. Always unassuming, stiping, a huge Talmid Chacham, about chesed, about tzedakah. I've learned a lot from him over the years. It's fitting that his neshama left as he was doing his favorite mitzvah, Tanchei Shabbos, despite the physical difficulties that he had doing it. It says by Yosef Tzaddik that what saved him in his time of need, the Musti Yoknoi Shel Aviv, the vision of his father. Father of Lishom learned pshat in this Rashi that it wasn't really the vision, it was his father within him. And Max had his father within him. They were both motzachein by anybody they met. Everybody who met them loved them. My in-laws certainly did something right with their children. The one word that describes Max, and I was discussing this with Vivian last night, is unique. He was the most unique individual that I know. Most of us can describe somebody and find somebody else similar. I don't know anybody in this world that is similar to him. When Yaakov Avinu found out that Yosef was still alive in Mitzrayim, he says, Yosef b'ni chai, echav erenu b'terem omos. Yosef still lives. I will go down to Mitzrayim to see him before I die. But it seems that Yaakov was apprehensive about going down to Mitzrayim. And we see this because later Hashem tells him, don't be afraid to go down. I will go down with you. I will bring you back. And Yosef placed his hand on your eyes. It seems to be a contradiction when Hashem is promising Yaakov. On the one hand, Yosef will place his hand on Yaakov's eyes, which is an expression referring to closing the eyes of the nifter. Yet Hashem also promises, I will bring you back up. And Rashi explains that while Yaakov died in Mitzrayim, he would be buried in Eretz Yisroel. But the question still is that Yaakov was fearful to go down to Mitzrayim. How much comfort is it to be told that you won't be coming back while you live? It must be that Yaakov was not afraid for himself, but for something else. Also, what does it mean that Hashem will go down with Yaakov? Hashem is everywhere. And how does Yaakov find comfort in the fact that Hashem will be with his children in the Sheba Mitzrayim? And finally, what's the significance of Yosef placing his hand on Yaakov's eyes? The Torah says that when Rachel was nifter, Yaakov bitul mitzeva and is there ad hayoim. Why does the Torah have to tell us that it's there to this day? The Gemara says that tzaddikim, even after they are nifter, they are called alive. They are alive because the legacy lives on long after they leave this world. We visit the kever asking for help. We consult their teachings, looking for wisdom and advice, and we ask ourselves, how would they have acted in this scenario? Their memories, teachings, and spirit take on a vibrant life of their own. It It's said that every time someone visits Kever Rachel and davens to Hashem, Rachel Amenu lives. Chaskel says that this was the significance of Yosef placing his hand on Yaakov's eyes. It symbolizes Yosef continuing to seek the wisdom and foresight of Yaakov Avinu after he was nifter. Even after Yaakov was nifter, his vision lived on, perpetuated by Yosef and future generations after him. Yaakov Avinu's apprehension in coming to Mitzrayim was not because he feared for himself, but that he feared for the ruchnius of his family. And Hashem tells him, I will go down with you and will bring you up. Hashem promises Yaakov that just like when you go down, your ruchnius is intact, so also when I bring you up more than 200 years later, it will be the same. How will this happen? Yosef will place his hand on your eyes. Yosef will be the custodian of your legacy. And Rebbe Cheskel says, this is what it means. Yaakov loy meis. Yaakov never died because Yosef made sure of it. Max's children and grandchildren have a great responsibility. They are custodians of a legacy that Max has passed on. They have seen his accomplishments and have heard about them from many people. But they cannot just speak and hear about this legacy. They must live it because this is their Yerusha. It's not easy, but they have to try because as long as they try, then Yaakov loy meis. Max will live on in all of them. I will miss him terribly, as most of you will. We'll all have a void in our lives. He should be a Melech Yosher for Rivki and the children and the whole Klal Yisrael. May I call upon him.
I can't help but think that the first psukim of the parsha are a hint to our Max. Yisroel, Yaakov, Menachem Yisroel. We focused on the Mendel part, but Vayolam Sham Kiva Hashemesh. Yesterday was the day when Max was here. The sun went down. But Vayifka V'Mokim, it says before that, and as Rashi says, what's the Mokim? Shehisker, that one was already talked about. Just the other day, somebody asked Rivki why they don't spend more time in Florida. And one of the answers she gave was, Max can't give up time for Shabbos. That was the Mokim, that was his Mokim. Vayifka V'Mokim. Then the Psukim end, Vayishkav V'Mokim. And Rashi says, only there did he lie down, but all the time he was by Aver, he never slept. And in a way, that was Max. It was learning. Of course he slept, but every minute that there was for learning. But I want to speak more about my personal connection. You know, when Max was going out with Rivki, it took quite some time, and when they were about to get engaged, my brother and I were a bit apprehensive, and the minute they got engaged, we realized we have a brother now. It was an immediate connection. He was so wonderful in every which way, we couldn't imagine why we were apprehensive at all. And since that time, how many times in those days we came there for Yom Tov or for any other reason, and Max along with Rivki were so hospitable. I would come, my sister Esther would come, my brother Tehay would come, all at one time. House would be jammed, and everybody was happy about it. Nobody worried about how crowded it was. But Max's and Rivki's chesed was not limited to us. I mean, they were really instruments of kiruv. I mean, every Shabbos they would have people at the table that, you know, it's easy to be a machnes oirech when you have, you know, nice, presentable people, but they would have guests at the table who were less than that, and so many of them became frum. They were original Kiruv people. But I want to get into one aspect that really touches my heart. Max lost the opportunity of Kibbud Av V'Aim early in life. Kibbud Av very early and Kibbud Aim a little later. But he transferred all of that to the Kibbud Av V'Aim for my parents. He was unbelievable in that. I don't think he always wanted to go there for Pesach, but for approximately 30 years, or after his mother was Niftaris, he would come every year to my parents for Pesach. To the extent that after my father was Niftar, Baruch Hashem, my mother was able to make Pesach all the time till about 12 years ago when my father was Niftar. And then my mother said, you know, Max was so loyal to us all these years, from now on, I'm going always to Max and Rivki for Pesach. And that's how much it felt. She felt it. I think the roof, Reb Shea was referring to it. Yaakov, we know, was fused the midas of Avram and Yitzchak together. And Yossi used the word unique before. I think Max figured out a unique way to put Chesed and Torah together. He actually would volunteer to take people to appointments, and sometimes for a year of appointments. And I think a lot of it was just to have the opportunity while he was waiting for him to sit on the side and learn Torah. I mean, that's combining Chesed with Torah. I mean, that's Yaakov Avinu. I mean, I remember a story where he said that I think it was some Asian woman who had a coffee shop, and when Max wasn't taking this particular person anymore, so he wasn't sitting and learning in front of her coffee shop. And one time she saw him again. What happened to you? And she said, you know, whenever you're sitting there reading your book, my business is great. Apparently his Torah even helped other people. Anyway, I want to ask Michiel on behalf of myself and my family. As much as I loved Max, it was impossible to give him the covet he deserved because, as was mentioned before, he made himself, he was mamayit himself, and it's a natural thing when somebody's mamayit himself that you don't give him the covet that he really deserves. So I want to ask Michiel on behalf of myself and my family, and he should be a gita beiter for Rivki, for Shlomie, Racheli, and Devorah, and for their spouses as well, and the Eibusher should help. Mashiach shall come and behave in many and many fellows.
You know, there were so many things that encompass my father, so many different attributes, so it's very hard in such a short time to be able to tap on all of them. So I just want to focus on a few, which the Rav and Reb Shea and spoke about it. He had no ego. There was no zich. I think everybody recognized that. You can ask him, anybody in the room or anybody who knew him could ask him any favor to do anything. Before you even finished the question, the sentence, no problem. He never ever refused to do anything for anybody. No matter how inconvenient, it didn't make a difference. It wasn't just for, the big jobs, for the important people. He would say yes. He never ever said no. No wasn't in his vocabulary, and it didn't make a difference for who. He always was willing. That came from his somebody who's what his shiftless, his anivas, his lack of ego, and what he was thinking about whether or not to do had nothing to do with his own biasness. It was completely what was better for the person asking, for his wife, for my mother, for me, my siblings, for anybody who knew him. The doctor said that he had a very, very shvacha heart, but he was complete. He was full of heart. I remember 7 years ago, Taki, when he was sick, we were sitting in the ICU, and the doctor said, he's from the sickest people in this entire unit. And Baruch Hashem, Nisim, he was able to come out. And after I spoke to him, he told me that years earlier, the doctor had told him that he didn't give him much time, like 20 years before that. And I once asked him, and he said, Shlom, the Rebbeinu Shlom's a good and he does good for me, does good for everybody. I have nothing to worry about. There was a true emunah, shuta that he had he lived with that. And he always listened to everybody else, and he was mechazik people. He would come early to shul, and he would shul with people. And someone recently told me they were in Lakewood, and they said, "Oh, I davened in your father's minyan." And I said, "Oh, you gave him shalom? You saw him?" He said, "I didn't even see him. He was on the other side of BAis Medrash, but I heard his amen, and it's amen." He would scream, and in his loud voice, and he was mechazik people. He never complained. He would come back from doctor's appointment. I said, I had to go. And he would say, the doctor said, Baruch Hashem, everything. He didn't want to overburden anybody else with what the doctor may have said. You got to be concerned about this. I think it was twofold. First of all, he had his emunah truth in the Rebbeinu Shlom that it didn't make no difference what the doctor said. The Rebbeinu Shlom was going to help him. And he talked to 7 years. This was mamish borrowed time. There was, like I said, he was in the ICU. But also, he didn't want to make, it wasn't about him. He didn't want to make you feel worrisome or concerned, and he only shared the good stuff with his family. And the spotlight, he never wanted the spotlight. The spotlight was never on him. It was always about somebody else. He never wanted the covet. He never wanted that. He didn't want his name associated with any organization. Nothing. It was about Yenim. He was just going about his way, doing his thing, his chesed. They mentioned Tachor Shabbos. Tachor Shabbos is one of them. But if he had one shirt, he would partially give it to you. There was never anything that he needed for himself. It was all about somebody else. And this is all about his chesed, but the Torah is the most important things. And I had this chus Baruch Hashem of being his chavrusa. Besides from learning as a child and a father, I was a regular chavrusa with him the last 25 years. We learned, actually obviously not yesterday, we learned the night before. I was a regular chavrusa, an hour a day for as long as I can remember. And that was one, his geschmack, his enjoyment in learning was unbelievable. I Baruch Hashem experienced it on a daily basis. I remember when I was in Shiva, I used to learn with him on nights on the phone. And we would learn a Tosfos. The next day I would get a phone call. I was looking over that Tosfos. I saw a different shot. He was literally living the Tosfos, living the learning. It was Talmud Chacham, but completely shakua in learning, mamish shakua in learning. And I think the Rav mentioned that especially recently he would get a little more tired, but you see what's important to somebody, and that's when they're more alive. When we learned, he was awake. That's what gave him his chiyus. That's what gave him, no matter how tired he was and the shvacha heart, but when we learned Torah, he was totally focused, fully involved. He always, and Uncle Session mentioned, he would go places and drop off. He always had a safe with him. He was always learning. He was never bored. He always had Hashem's Torah with him. Yeah, again, I said it's impossible to encapsulate. I like Uncle Yossi said, it's you choose to fill, and I'm going to realize it more and more. But Baruch Hashem, I was zoich to have an unbelievable father. I was the only son, so I was able to spend a lot of time with him, and learn with him, and just I didn't fully appreciate who my great father was, but hopefully I'll be able to continue his legacy. And because we didn't fully appreciate, a lot of times, didn't realize how great he was, and I want to ask Mechila upon myself and everybody who knew him that we didn't give you he deserved the covet like Yaakov Avinu, but I didn't. We may not have given it, and I'll ask Mechila on behalf of myself and everybody, for my mother and my siblings and his Einikov, my children and my nephews and nieces, and for all his friends. Hashem should erase the tears.
The Gemara in Baba Basant of Chavtes, and there's the Gemara, in the middle of the Gemara, there's a Rashi stops and the Rashban takes over. And in the middle of Rashi it says, Ad Kan Pirish Rashi, from now on is the Rashban. There's a girsa on the side, Kan Meis Rashi. It's funny if the girsa and how you look at what Rashi stopped, what's the vart? And I came down this morning and I went into the den and I saw the stender. On the stender was the Gemara in Zvachim that we had learned yesterday, also Daf Chavtes, ironically. And in the middle of Daf Chavtes in Zvachim, we learned yesterday morning, mamish right now. And now there's a Khan Meis daddy. He's not here. And I think what it means Khan Meis Rashi is that Rashi wasn't nifter in Germany or France, wherever it was. He was nifter in the Gemara. That's what his life was. There wasn't anything where he was, it didn't make a difference. That's all that mattered was the Gemara. That Taisus, that was the only thing that mattered to him. Where he was, on the road, on the go, it was Khan Meis. Baruch Hashem, I was able to grow up in a house that was steeped in Torah and mitzvahs, but I never really got any chinuch in how to be a balabas. Until I got married, people always said, "Oh, you're so lucky. You're sure you're going to see." And it was, I think, like the first week after I got married, and it was such an unusual sight to see someone like after a bath in his bathrobe, sitting down, just learning. There's nothing else that mattered. There's nothing else. It was like Shlomo. There's no boredom ever. It was like, okay, I have time now. I'm going to sit and learn until he fall asleep or whatever it was. And it didn't matter where he was. When we used to learn every, for the last 7 years, we learned every morning. And he was on vacation. I'd say, okay, fine. So we'll pick up after you come back. He'd say, no. He said, like I go to Alaska. He said, so I'll look at the glacier. 15 minutes. I get the point, and I could call you after that. Don't worry. I'll be available. There was the only thing that mattered to him was the Gemara, the Teisvis. You'd say, that like Shlomo, that Cheshbon and Teisvis. That was all that mattered to him. The second point was, I think, to his children, to his family. It was he had a boundless love. Literally, I cannot remember a time where he said no. Times where he should have said no, and he could not say no. And it was. I know that we benefit always from his yeses. It was whatever his children, anical, whatever they wanted. They wanted to go here. They wanted to go there. If I mentioned maybe I'm thinking about going away for a day, be okay. We'll drive him. Not a problem. He would drop anything. He would give anything, just to help his kids, help his anical. But it wasn't just for his family. It was all his friends, everyone. He would always, he'd say, that person's such a good friend, and he had so many good friends. It was really like you think about how many good friends he had. But that was because I think he always had good stories to say over. He always had this, did I ever tell you this story? And sometimes we heard the stories over and over again. But it was because he had these stories because he had such a good listening ear. It took me a long time to realize that he would just sit there and listen, and then he would absorb. And people enjoy when people listen to them. And I think that's why he was such a good friend to so many people. And then really towards, after, in the last 7 years, he really was busy with Temche Shabbos. And that became the most important thing. Sometimes it even pushed us, the family. It was like, I'm going to drive back. I'm going to come to you, then I'm going to drive back 9 hours, and I'm going to drive back to Lakewood 9 hours, and I'm going to go back on Tuesday because I think that there's someone who I delivered to, and they need a special type of bread. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm the only one that could do it. So I'm going to. It was unbelievable to behold. The last time he left us in Lakewood, I had bought him a tablet that had all the Gemara on it, and he said, he used it I think once or twice. When he came this time, he said, he said, I'm going to bring it when I come. I want you to teach me how to use it again, because he said, when I'm traveling, he said it would be good to, instead of taking so many different Gemaras, we have 3-4 Gemaras with me, and holding 3-4 different Masechtas. It'd be so good if I had them all in one place, and they'll make my travel so much easier. And now he's going to have all his Gemaras with him, all in one place. Everything is there. I know that you care deeply for each and every one of us, all of Klal Yisrael. It would pain you so much. You couldn't deal with some of the pain. You just, you almost ignored it because you couldn't deal with it. And the one thing I know is that when you wanted something for your kids, you were stubborn. You didn't give up. When you wanted something for your family, for your friends, you didn't give up. You would just keep on asking. So keep on asking for us, for the mishpacha, for everyone. And all the tzarahs that Klal Yisrael has. Please don't stop asking. Accompany.
Shlomo mentioned it's impossible to try to summarize such an unbelievable tzaddik. The list of BAis Medrash are limitless. A few specific things immediately come to mind when I think of Daddy. His family, Gemillas Chasodim, his Torah, and his emunah. The love Daddy had for his family had absolutely no limits. The first thing the Devorah said when we received a terrible phone call yesterday was, I speak to Daddy 5 times a day. How can I go on without my best friend? Daddy called so often because he adored each and every child and grandchild. He called to hear about them because he genuinely cared. It was never about Daddy, and Daddy never ever said no. Daddy's chesed was incredible. Any kind of chesed, his house was always open. But high up on the list, as mentioned, was Temche Shabbos. It's impossible to describe Daddy's feelings for Temche Shabbos. It wasn't a route, it was his passion. He was friendly to those he delivered to, and they waited his arrival. Because he listened, he cared for everybody, and treated everybody equally. Daddy was a tremendous Hachaim, always learning, and he knew a tremendous amount. People would ask Daddy to learn difficult Masechtas if they're trying to make a Siyam Shas for a yahrzeit, because they knew Daddy could do it. He probably already knew it. Always learning and always with the Gemara in hand. Daddy's emunah was incredible. He lived peacefully, always knowing that he was not in control. His faith in the Rebbeinu Shalom was incredible and it was inspiring to all of us. On behalf of Devorah and myself and the family, I want to ask Mechila, there was no way we treated you properly. You didn't allow us to treat us properly because of your incredible anivas.
El molei rachamim, shoichein b'amroi miyim, amtzei menucha nechoina, al kanfei hashechino, v'malois kedoshim u'tahorim, kizoyar horaki yamazhirim, es Nismas, Menachem Yisrael ben Shlomo-were, sheholach li olamoi, ba'avur shebli neder, not v'tzedaka, b'yad haskoras nishmasoi, b'gan Eden, Tehay menuchasoi, lochein balo rachamim yastireyu, b'seiser kenofov li olamiyim, btzror Hachaim es nishmasoi, Adonai hu nachalosoi, v'yanuach b'sholem al mishkovoi, v'noimar amen.
For all those who are on Zoom, we will show the actual levaya down the street in a few moments. The family will be sitting Shiva Toronto. But Max, as per his request, is being driven to Lakewood. So they're finalizing Shiva now. Oh. So are you driving it out or not? Are you following it?
Yeah.
We are following.
He asked me if there are any texts. I realized, forget texting. I forgot to read it.
They're gonna be done now. Are you gonna do
Hi, once again, my name is CK. We're outside the Agudah. It's a little bit chilly here. We'll be hearing wind that will be picked up in the audio component of the Zoomcast. But we will be accompanying Max as he takes the final walk away from the BAis Medrash. Once again, this is Kibbutz Altar on behalf of McGillivray Agudas Yisroel, BAis Medrash, Agudas Yisroel, Nismas, Rov Shlita, and all its members. I want to thank you for joining the Zoom, giving petirah to Max. Also, from my own memories, Max was someone who personified Torah, Avodah Gemillas Chasodim. Somehow was able to blend the three together that you couldn't distinguish one from the other. They were singularly one. Shiva information will be posted as soon as it becomes available. A recording of the levaya and all the Menachem will be available on the Nismas website, as well as on the Aguda site and Steels. We should meet at Simchas. Thank you.